Welcome to this month's edition of Pulp Nonfiction, the paper and packaging podcast. I'm Greg Johnson with Sustana Fiber, and as always, I'm happy to be joined by my co-host, Dr. Marta Pazos.
Hi, Greg.
So, Marta, being an avid runner, I know you can appreciate the role that athletics plays not only in our fitness levels, but also in the role that sports plays in the environment. That's why we couldn't be more excited to have Kristen Fulmer, a sustainability expert and the newly named Senior Director of Sustainability at the Oakview Group, or OVG, in Los Angeles, here as our guest today. Kristen will help us better understand how sustainability plays out in the sports, live entertainment, and hospitality worlds. Kristen, it's great to see you again, and thank you for visiting with us today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited about the conversation.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. So it's fall. Football is kicked off. Playoff baseball's on deck. And beginning next month in October, both basketball and hockey season begin. And speaking of hockey, Seattle's Climate Pledge Arena is where the Seattle Kraken play, have a really cool thing. It's called green ice. Can you tell us about that?
Super excited for all the seasons to kick off. It's a really exciting time of year. Also busy for our industry, but really looking forward to it. So at Climate Pledge Arena, the arena is really built, and even within the name, with a whole bunch of different sustainability strategies in mind, including the greenest ice in the NHL. So this ice is made from water that's collected from Seattle's plentiful rainfall. It collects in a 15,000 gallon cistern under the plaza next to Climate Pledge Arena, and then is used to be frozen on the ice, as the ice, I should say. And in addition to that, they use a Zamboni that's fully electric, and actually all of the vehicles and uses of the facility are fully electric. There's no natural gas or other fuels used in the facility. And they also have a lot of other water reduction commitments and installations in place, including waterless urinals, really efficient kind of showers and fixtures throughout the facility. And they also have on-site retention tanks for, again, to collect all of the rainwater, make sure that there's not a huge amount of runoff from the plaza or kind of the outside landscape of the arena. And they also have water bottle, basically dispensers throughout the stadium where people can bring in their own water bottles and get free water while they're visiting, which is a unique feature of many arenas.
It is really exciting to hear that there are some venues, right, that are trying to mitigate their contribution to climate change, if you want, right? Do you have an idea of how many others, or are you planning to roll these out to other stadiums?
At Oakview Group, we own and operate several facilities across the U.S. in different markets, some of which might not have as clean of a grid as Seattle does in Climate Pledge Arena. But most of our venues have some sustainability commitments or are working on their sustainability journey. Climate Pledge Arena is a renovated stadium, so the embodied carbon emissions reduced in that building construction is substantial. We're also doing another renovation in Baltimore that is, a renovation project, so hugely reduces that embodied carbon emissions from the beginning. We have carbon neutral and zero waste commitments at both UBS Arena in New York and Acrisure Arena in Palm Desert. And we're working on a lot of other sustainability commitments in our facility in Austin, Texas, called Moody Center. And we also manage as a third party many other venues across the U.S. That we don't necessarily own, but we operate. And so integrating sustainability into all of those almost 400 venues is really critical to us. And because of our experience in sustainability, venues come to us and ask us how to help them either begin their journey or continue to have impact. And we're actually soon rolling out a program to help them do just that, almost as a service to help any venue integrate sustainability, understand their footprint, and also create the right decisions to have an impact over time, so that they aren't making decisions like electrifying their building without having an understanding of where that electricity is coming from.
This October here in Chicago, The Who will be in concert. And once the band is finished, they've done their encore and fans are streaming out of the UC. People probably won't be thinking, fans won't be really being aware of where's the best place to recycle my paper cup. In instances like this, not only at the end of an event, whether it's a concert or a ball game, but during the whole length of the fan experience, how do you at OVG try to impact fans' behavior in terms of enforcing, or I should say maybe trying to improve recycling efforts and other fan behavior like that?
Yeah, I think there's probably many solutions to impacting fan behavior, and it starts really from before fans even get to the venue. So venues can think about what they include in, like, the, they call it the know before you go emails, basically the information ahead of time that they're receiving. If they emphasize a commitment to zero waste or language related to recycling, it will reach at least some fans who are reading that, or even kind of passively see icons or small things just to get them thinking about sustainability and recognizing that this venue might prioritize that. So there's that level of commitment and engagement with fans even before. And that's, again, just an operations decision that doesn't even cost anything to include. Just type out the language. Another element might be related to the artists themselves. So many bands and entertainment just in general are starting to partner with environmental organizations that can help them talk about the importance of their commitments to environmental issues, whether that's recycling, zero waste, or something related to energy, or something related to protecting the oceans, whatever that might be. And so I think that's a really effective way to reach fans, because they're not there to see the building. Usually they're there to see the entertainment. And so coming from the entertainment themselves is really helpful. But I think operationally, buildings can set themselves up to make it really easy for fans. And I think that's the important part, is the ease, and sometimes making it fun too. So we see different events worked at, like the Major League Baseball All-Star Game or the Super Bowl, the events related to the Super Bowl, engaging fans outside. These are times where you can actually make sustainability fun, make recycling fun. I think the Waste Management Open does that really well, and just engages people and makes sustainability kind of part of the experience. So that's the ideal, but at the very least, making it easy. So having, very clear signs, very accessible bins, disposal points. And so making it so that there's really not a question, that someone doesn't have to stand at a bin and think for more than a millisecond of where their cup should actually go. And then the other point is, in addition to setting up the spaces properly, the venue's procuring those materials is really important. So if we want to incentivize people to recycle, we probably need to make sure we have recyclable products in our facilities. So connecting those two dots and then making sure they coordinate with each other on procurement as well as disposal is really important.
Kristen, those are all great points. What would be an example of a fun type of an experience that you could use at an arena to induce fans to recycle more?
Well, one, people love free stuff. So if you can incentivize them playing some kind of game, recycling identification
Contest.
game, even like on the Jumbotron, or just on, outside on the plaza, or somewhere throughout the concourse, and they can win something free with it, they'll, kind of passively learn something potentially as well. So I think those are all fun things. I've seen, a basketball shoot the plastic bottle into the goal type of game. And I was actually just recently at Coors Field in Denver for the Colorado Rockies, and they did some really interesting, it was not related to recycling, it was more related to energy reduction, but they did on the Jumbotron, had a player talk about, named as many different energy efficiency solutions as he could think of on the Jumbotron. And then they had a fan try to beat the number that he had listed, and that was sponsored by, I believe, the local utility company. And so that's a great way to get people engaged and probably passively learning something.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting to hear all that. And also, I have to say that I find it a little sad that we have to go to those lengths of making it so easy, for people. Like we have to be treated like kids, that unless you make it easy for us, we will not go to an extent to do something that it should be right for the planet. Because right now, there is still that difference, that huge difference between what gets collected and what actually gets processed. If I don't believe that that's going to get processed, chances are that a lot of people won't either.
It's a difficult challenge. And, I hear those types of comments, not just necessarily from fans, but even from operators of our buildings. I would guess that part of their answer is, one, related to making that investment as a venue, to have staffing in place to help sort it in the back of house, to engage fans in the front of house, to make sure that it happens and reassure them of that, but also then have the accountability to know what is happening to that waste and to make changes when you don't think something is right, or you don't believe it's going to the right point. So having a point person in the venue to reassure the programs in the front of house that, yes, please continue to do this, while also making sure that what they're telling them is happening to it is correct, I think is important. And then being transparent about that process.
There was a recent Wall Street Journal article, Kristen, that mentioned all the innovative things you're doing to minimize sound distraction and improve the acoustics. They mentioned a Billie Eilish concert this past February that had some rave reviews regarding the sound at the UBS Arena in the New York City area, an arena that you work closely with. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, on the whole, as science and technology basically get better in these topics of sound quality and even just understanding and measuring sound, we can just do better over time. And so many arenas in the market, kind of get by and continue to book shows and continue to bring people in just based on their location or based on their reputation. But we within OVG really want to focus on that experience, enhancing that experience, and really making it so that it's not just, oh, my favorite artist is performing, I guess I'll go to this arena, but I want to go to this arena and I'm excited to go to this space to enjoy it from a variety of different angles, almost, depending on whoever that artist is. Maybe it's your favorite and maybe it's not, but hopefully you have a good experience either way. And so much of that facility is just about the experience overall and integrating technology in all sorts of new and interesting ways, both in, how quickly you can get through line to get concessions. Maybe there isn't a line, how even seamlessly you can park, what your experience is. Are the food and drinks related to your local market? Does it feel personable?
Could some of the materials that you are collecting, the waste that is being collected from that same arena, to be repurposed into that venue?
Venues are definitely starting to think about this a little bit more strategically now. I think it's more apparent when you think about, you've just hosted an event, maybe it's an all-star game. And you have all of the extra banners and signs that have been hung throughout it. Instead of landfilling those because maybe they're recyclable, maybe they're not, maybe we don't really know what they are, how can we reuse them either into merchandise that fans are interested in either buying or being gifted, or, like you said, used in the facility directly as building material? Definitely thinking about interesting ways to do that. I mean, kind of back to my construction roots, there's all sorts of initiatives going into place about how to, put broken glass into concrete as additional, basically filler to replace sand. So there's all sorts of interesting solutions that are out there that people are working on, making sure are up to code and able to use for actual building material. But when I read the Wall Street Journal article thinking about fiberglass, my first questions, of course, were about what that material really is, where we're getting it from, and what the kind of background from a sustainability side is and will be. And so I think, as we move forward and thinking about all of the new innovative solutions that are out there, also finding that balance between the most sustainable material is going to be an important quality.
So one of the qualities Kristen, that a lot of fans, of course, enjoy is food. And like a lot of people, I love peanuts and Cracker Jack, but obviously there's a trend towards more healthier food options. Here in the Midwest, the Kansas City Chiefs, for example, serve shawarma and falafel wraps. And we all know about all the West Coast stadiums and arenas. They all seem like Whole Foods. Do we see, or I should say, do you see at OVG this trend continuing where there will be better for you food options? And do you see fans kind of embracing those healthier choices?
I want to focus on providing high quality and a lot of different options of food, and allowing fans to make their own decision. And then, of course, on the back end, we can capture that data, analyze it, and understand what trends exist based on the artist that's playing or based on the sporting event that it is, and start to understand what types of different fans or visitors like different types of foods so that we can provide that option instead. I think, on the whole, if we just don't think about the health component for a second and just think about the reduction in waste, that's such a huge opportunity for us to have an environmental impact. And so no matter what type of food it is, we need to make sure that we are creating or making enough of the right types of food and less of the type of food that won't get purchased.
In the rise of COVID, despite of I don't think that there is any confirmation that a case has been that a person has been infected because of touching a surface, but that has created a lot more waste in general, right? Because we need more wrappers, we need more defenses, right, against potential infection, potential contraction of the virus, and yeah, a lot more things have gone to more disposable, more wrappers. So have you noticed anything like that? And do you see it already going down? Can you tell us more about that?
To answer your question, I think some of those things were tried initially. I would say most of it has been scaled back fairly quickly. But that also means, that most venues were still using ketchup packets before the pandemic, or a lot of them. And so, there was no, now we're quote back and we're still at ketchup packets or something that's still wasteful. And so out of the pandemic came a lot of, touchless condiment dispensers and a lot of interesting features that we didn't even have before. And so I think that response has been really interesting. But I think people are quickly realizing that the waste challenge is a longer term problem than the response to COVID, because we saw how quickly people did come back to venues once we opened them up on the whole. And so I think those responses are going to be what's top of mind for us in the future.
Well, those are all good points. And Marta, thanks for bringing up waste. I know, Kristen, you're pretty familiar with what we do at Sustana Fiber, and our recycled products are added to all kinds of sustainable food and beverage packaging, from paper cups and carry-out containers to sandwich wraps and even microwavable sleeves. What are your thoughts, if you could share them with us, on a lot of the venues now taking a look at replacing their plastic packaging with paper packaging?
I think, we have to think about all efforts in sustainability as a journey, and just, moving from the bare minimum to some level of action and setting some future commitments. We're seeing, national, federal commitments around banning single-use plastic. We're seeing cities and local governments do it. And, we're starting to see our venues do that as well. Climate Pledge Arena, as an example, has a single-use plastic ban by next year. And so these are all elements in place that we need all of the solutions to exist, like recycled paper, potentially, recyclable and recycled metal, aluminum options, as well as reusable options and biodegradable options as substitutes for at least getting away from landfilling items.
The word biodegradable, when used in plastics, is that it has become what I consider a danger, right? Because people see biodegradable and they are like, oh, banana peel, which, it would actually go against everything that we need to do for packaging, which is it has to maintain its integrity to protect the product, right? Therefore, it can't be biodegradable like a banana peel. So how are you dealing with these new compostable, biodegradable when it comes up to collection of waste in such big venues?
The short answer is that it's really, really hard. And all of our venues not only are at the mercy of different municipalities and infrastructure, but they're also being approached by all sorts of vendors that have, different qualities or claim different qualities related to sustainability. And so navigating that is a really big challenge that, sometimes we all necessarily don't know the right answer, but have to make either the most informed decisions or ask the most informed questions about getting to that right outcome. But I also think in this a little bit kind of confusing market on this topic, it's important for us to try different options and understand what actually works and what makes sense. We have to kind of, I think, be open to all of these different products and at least understand where they're coming from and what their environmental impacts are, and continue to be open to new ones. And so I think that's the challenge in our industry is, securing a long-term partnership or some of these just agreements with using certain products over another without kind of fully understanding the full picture. So I think it's important for us to try different things out.
Sure. Well, that's well said, Kristen. On another topic, there are a lot of older arenas, concert halls, and convention centers that use vast amounts of energy. What are some things that OVG does to help not only these older venues, older generation facilities, but also the newer venues in terms of minimizing energy usage?
At OVG, we talked about Climate Pledge Arena, which is in a renovated stadium. It's the old Key Arena. They kept a lot of the building structure, really impressively so, actually. And so a lot of the steel and concrete that held the embodied carbon, which is of course a huge component of a building's footprint from the beginning, was maintained. So we reduced that off the bat. Since they have hockey in there, that requires a decent amount of refrigerant to keep that ice cold. And so that does include and take up a lot more energy consumption than in other buildings. So I think we just need to spend a lot more time thinking about where that energy is coming from and using a lot of our resources to drive clean energy solutions.
Which ones are the most difficult to reduce?
You can reduce scope 1 and 2 just by better procurement decisions.
Yeah.
Right. And then, so if you're procuring renewable energy, that helps a lot. The bulk of the carbon emissions is in scope 3. So fan travel is hugely significant. So if you count that within your footprint, people traveling to and from the venue, that's of course a huge component. If you also quantify team and artist travel there and back, also very significant. That's a lot of gray area there of defining kind of where that footprint begins and ends.
It seems today, for a number of reasons, including economic, we're seeing sort of a back to the future, sort of a shift back to multi-purpose arenas. From a sustainability perspective, are there reasons for that, especially with some of these retractable roofed or dome stadiums?
Overall, venues are a resource to their communities. And so if they are centrally located, easily accessible, and everybody knows where they are, their use should be maximized. It's kind of silly to have venues that sit open or unused for most of the year. And so finding efficient solutions or efficiencies to those schedules of operation makes sense from a staffing perspective, from an energy consumption perspective, and just like the efficiencies of how that building operates. And I think that that's important, but it's also really difficult. So, many arenas that, we either manage or work with have multi-tenants, both, one or two different sports teams, as well as concerts in between that. And even the facilities that just host concerts and other events have a huge amount of transition that happens between those events. And so I guess on one hand, you have a facility that's designed specifically for one use and it's only used for that one use. You're not going to have a lot of transitionary time in between, which probably causes waste and additional energy consumption and transportation. But on the other hand, if you have kind of a multi-use facility and lots of events happening, maybe multiple events happening per day, there's a huge amount of activity there, and it all happens in one space. You can use the same staff, you can use the same vendors. So I think there's pros and cons to both.
Kristen, what would you say is the number one sustainability concern of OVG's clients, and what are you doing to address that concern?
There's a lot of concerns about sustainability, especially based on where you are. So, if you're in a desert location, chances are you're thinking much more about water conservation than when you're in, I don't know, Florida, and you're thinking more about ocean plastic. So I think that the concerns do kind of differ depending on where you are. I think the overall concern is that they know they need to be doing something and don't know where to start. So I think that's the number one concern, is not knowing necessarily where to start or where to take action first. But I think what's top of mind for most people, and it's been a huge component of this conversation, and rightly so, is waste. So waste is very visible. People see it. People know that it's bad, and it's been part of the conversation for decades. Where carbon emissions you can't see, you can't feel, you don't really have a good understanding of the quantity, and you don't necessarily know how to help reduce it.
I agree with you. I feel that sometimes we put way too much emphasis to waste and don't look at the big picture. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think that the waste is definitely an issue that we need to deal with. But one thing that I really liked to hear is that people come humbly saying, we don't know where to start. And that, I believe that is a great thing, honestly, because people are realizing we need to do something. We're here to learn what.
Absolutely.
Good point, Marta. And speaking of points, I was wondering, Kristen, do you have any pointers for any professionals and as well as students who are maybe, they've thought of sustainability, especially in the sports or entertainment world, but really don't know where to start? Any guidance you might be able to offer them?
Just getting involved, I think, is the biggest thing. And also just putting yourself out there and networking. I know that everybody says that, but I think it's really important. And I would just say, just one small point is that I think every job I've ever gotten out of grad school has been through LinkedIn connections, sending messages back and forth on LinkedIn, having conversations with people. So highly recommend doing the kind of cold messaging when you find people that you're interested in talking to.
That's a great point. Wouldn't you agree, Marta?
Oh, I've done cold reaching out to a lot of people, and it works.
Kristen, as we wrap up our conversation with you, it's been a real pleasure. I just have one more question, and we'll let you go. And this question is basically this. What are some things you do in both personally and professionally to help the environment?
Professionally, I think we just spent a while talking through it, but professionally, I would say I spend a lot of time just trying to mainstream sustainability, make it interesting and appealing for everyone, both venue operators to fans and visitors to athletes. So professionally, really just thinking about that almost all the time, and how to make that make as much business sense as possible. Personally, one, just enjoy spending time outdoors and appreciating nature and the experience of being outside, which I think is important for mental health, as well as reminding me of why I do the work that I do. I'm sure you guys feel similarly to that. And one small thing that I've done now for, I guess, since the pandemic is I haven't bought any brand new clothes. I've only bought secondhand, or, basically, like, I would actually say almost entirely secondhand, if not just haven't bought any new clothes in general. So it's like one small commitment that I've kind of made as a promise to myself. I really try to stick to it. I think making something small that you can do every day is a good one. Kristen, it's been a delight to chat with you today. The intersection of sports and sustainability entertainment has always fascinated me, and we're grateful for your time today, and good luck to you in your new role at the Oakview Group. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for having me. It's a good conversation. Join us next month for a new episode of Pulp Nonfiction, the paper and packaging podcast, and be sure to check out SustanaFiber.com for previous podcasts, as well as for more information
on our recycled fiber products for your sustainable packaging needs. Thanks again. Remember to recycle, and we'll see you again soon.